Welcome back to another edition of This Month at the TNM. We're in the middle of the legislative process, and everyone's working really hard to get the Texas Independence Referendum Act passed. Representative Brian Slayton has just filed the bill, and the buzz has been nonstop. It's all over the media, and some are very supportive of the bill. And some are scared to death that there's a possibility that the people will actually get to have a say in their future. While this act is groundbreaking, the legislative process that we're having to go through isn't. The Texas Independence Referendum Act is a standard bill. It gets filed, it gets scheduled, it gets debated, just like all the other bills. What we need to do now is whatever we can to give this bill momentum so that it doesn't just die in the darkness of a committee. The way you can help in this is to keep up the pressure on your legislators. Now that the bill has moved to the State Affairs Committee, the members of that committee are ripe for your call, in addition to your own rep and senator. As we've discussed in the past, the TNM has several web pages available to make this process easier. This page has multiple tools and resources to help you contact and educate your representatives in Austin on this very important legislation. In addition to all the contact information you could ever want, this is where you can download a copy of the bill, which you really should do so you can be familiar with what we're trying to get passed. There are also sample letters to your legislators, as well as a sample letter to the editor you can use to send to your local newspaper. This is a great way to get the word out to the people in your area as to what's going on. From the News and Updates page, this page gives you a list of all the members of the State Affairs Committee. These people all deserve a call from Texans telling them how important it is that this bill be scheduled for a public hearing, which is the next step in the process. This is where the citizens of Texas, like you, can come out and speak for or against the bill. It's this pressure on your legislators that will help get this bill moved to the floor of the House, where it can be debated and voted on. This is the goal of all this effort, to get the bill out of committee and to be sure that enough legislators, both in the House and Senate, understand what the bill is and why they should support it. What we need to emphasize is this is not a bill for TEXIT. It's legislation that puts the question of TEXIT in front of the people of Texas, allowing them to make the decision. Who else should make this decision? The bill as written is ready to go. All the proper language is in place, and the question is very clearly stated. Should the state of Texas reassert its status as an independent nation? Pretty straightforward, huh? Surveys have shown that if the vote were held today, it would pass handily. We just got to get it to that point. Now, what happens after the bill passes a vote in the House? It then moves to the other chamber, the Senate. The process then repeats until it is passed by both chambers. Once this happens, it'll move to the governor's desk for his signature, or veto. We need the support of 76 members of the Texas House and 16 members of the Texas Senate, the lieutenant governor, and the governor. One question we're often asked is, if this bill passes, does that mean we've declared ourselves independent? The answer to that is no. This bill only puts the question onto the ballot in the upcoming election, allowing Texans to decide whether or not we should reassert our status as an independent nation. The bill itself outlines the next steps that will be taken, forming a Texas Independence Committee to look at what will need to be done to return Texas to its status as an independent republic. Another thing people are confused about is whether what we're asking for is even legal. One of their favorite go-to arguments is a flawed Supreme Court case called Texas v. White. This is just something they've heard of, but usually they haven't really looked into it themselves. The truth is that there is nothing in the U.S. Constitution that prohibits us from having this vote or from reasserting our independence, should that be what the vote shows that we want. Here's Dr. Matt Kvortrup, one of the world's foremost authorities on independence referendums, totally destroying the Texas v. White argument.
Right, yes. And this is where I will sound a bit like a law professor. Now, some of you will know that there is a case called Texas v. White. In England, by the way, we say and, so we're slightly different there. But so Texas and White, I will call it. So there was a case. It was to do with bonds and so on. It's actually not to do with independence. Back in 1868, and Chase, who was the Chief Justice at the time, was penning this famous judgment there. Now, when I read that particular judgment by the U.S. Supreme Court, I was slightly puzzled because he talks about there being a permanent, perfect union of states, and then in his judgment, the learned judge goes on to refer to the Articles of Confederation as the basis upon which he makes his decision. Now, in very simple constitutional terms, and I'm sorry if I'm sounding like a constitutional lawyer, which is what I am, but nevertheless, if you are a lawyer, then you base your legal reasoning on the existing legal framework, on the existing constitution. Now, as you all know, the American Constitution was drawn up in Philadelphia in 1787, and that is the only thing upon which you can base your judgment. The Articles of Confederation are null and void. They just basically been superseded by another constitutional order. So there was a constitutional break at that time. So therefore, if in reading that particular case, and indeed also some of the subsequent cases where they refer to that, just basically is not good law.
So now that we know our referendum is legal, we need to get back to convincing our representatives in Austin to support it. Since polls have shown the people of Texas support this, if our legislators don't support giving us the vote, they're not only not representing us, they're also violating their oath of office, and we need to remind them of this. Standing in the way of the people of Texas voting on self-government is a violation of our rights, and it should be treated that way. It's okay if they're against TEXIT. It's not okay if they're against our fundamental right to decide. Here's some concrete things that you can do right now. Contact your state representative and state senator. They work for you and need to hear from you. Ask your rep to sign on to House Bill 3596 as a co-author. Unlike the House, the Senate can file a bill until the end of the session. Ask your senator to file a companion bill or at least sign on to the House bill as a co-sponsor. If they're not interested in supporting your right to vote on TEXIT, consider replacing them in the next election by running for office. Your organization has readily available tools to help you do this. The more people we can get in these positions, the more we can do to return control of our state, our country, to the people. If you're suited to this role, it's a great way to move the ball down the field. The more people we have on our side on this issue, the better. That's why we just can't stop at just keeping the pressure up on Austin. We need to educate our fellow Texans on what this legislation means for them. You know how important it is for us to be able to control our own destiny. There are thousands of Texans out there who think just the way we do. We need to reach them and equip them to help in our efforts. Get out to the many local events hosted by the TNM and bring some friends. If you don't see an event in your area, organize one yourself. We need to educate the public about TEXIT. Don't worry if you have all the answers. You can direct them to the TEXIT Now website or to Daniel's book. I don't think a question's been asked that hasn't been answered with those resources. We're in pretty exciting times for our organization. You can just feel the momentum building. We just need to keep pushing. We're getting closer every day. That's it for this month's show. We appreciate you being here. It's nice being around friends, isn't it? We'll see you next month.